Welcome to WHRO's Weekly Edition. I'm Jordan Christie.
And I'm Barry Graham.
We highlight the week's news and stories happening all over Hampton Roads.
In this week's program, Virginia Senator Mark Warner announced this week that he's gearing up to run for his fourth term in 2026. He was first elected to the seat in 2008.
This moment calls for big ideas. The tech companies that displace jobs with AI should actually help pay for the solutions. We need universal healthcare coverage and a complete overhaul of affordable housing and childcare.
I sat down with WHRO reporter Toby to discuss the newest blueprint for Virginia's legal cannabis retail market and what folks should expect.
It's the holiday season, which means it's big business for local tree farms. We'll break down the economics of the industry.
It's WHRO's Weekly Edition. Virginia Senator Mark Warner announced he'll run again to keep his seat in the U.S. Senate. WHRO's Michelle Hankerson reports it would be the former governor's fourth term in the Senate.
Warner has held his Senate seat since 2009. He was governor from 2002 to 2006 and made his fortune in the cell phone and telecommunications industries before politics. That experience will help him lead the country as it wrestles with artificial intelligence, he said in a video announcing his campaign.
This moment calls for big ideas. The tech companies that displace jobs with AI should actually help pay for the solutions. We need universal healthcare coverage and a complete overhaul of affordable housing and childcare.
Warner has to get through party primaries before the November 2026 elections. Right now, 3 other Democrats have declared their candidacy for Warner's seat. Loretta Daniels is a school board member in Spotsylvania County. Jason Reynolds is an Army veteran working in IT in Fredericksburg. And Army Reserve Officer Gregory Ike Eichelberger wants to represent young people in the Senate. Michelle Hankerson, WHRO News.
Virginia Beach residents could get $50 worth of free parking at the oceanfront next year. WHRO's John Doucette has more on the consideration in front of City Council.
Public Works Director L.J. Hansen says the city is looking for ways to attract locals to the oceanfront.
This is not parking everywhere, but it is parking between the areas of, say, Pacific Avenue and Atlantic Avenue. And that would be at the on-street parking, would also be in the lots and in the parking garages that are in that same area.
Residents would be able to reload their digital voucher for another $50 of parking. That, however, would cost $25. Other elements of the proposal include progressive parking rates. Those might help turn over spaces on the street more quickly. If City Council backs the plan, vouchers could go into effect in April. John Doucette, WHRO News.
Leaders across the Chesapeake Bay region have approved an update to the long-running agreement that guides the Bay's cleanup. WHRO's Catherine Hafner dives into the agreement's details.
Virginia and other states signed on to the last watershed agreement more than a decade ago. It sets targets for things like conserving trees, restoring oysters, and reducing pollution. The revised document streamlines goals through 2040 under 4 broad categories, including healthy landscapes and clean water. It's all voluntary, but Keisha Sedlacek with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation says the agreement helps dozens of partners work toward a shared vision.
We've all come together on the state and federal level and said we're committed to saving the Bay, and this is our guiding light.
She says the update falls short of what environmental groups hoped, especially on targets for saving wetlands and protecting land from development. But officials can always choose to do more. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
Hampton Roads Regional Economic Development Group has drawn up a plan to grow the local economy by playing on the area's unique strengths.
WHRO business reporter Toby sat down with Doug Smith of the Hampton Roads Alliance to talk about the region's new economic playbook.
What inspired the Hampton Roads economic playbook?
The things that we do in Hampton Roads that we do really, really well, build nuclear submarines and aircraft carriers, and now it's offshore wind turbines. A lot of that has not been valued since the Cold War. If you think about where the country is and was a couple of years ago, we're trying to rebuild the military industrial base. We're trying to reindustrialize or reshore. We learned during COVID, we need to bring some manufacturing back to the U.S. We're trying to establish an energy strategy that allows us to meet the just exponentially changing demand for energy. We're trying to do all those things at once without a whole lot of direction. So that's what drove sort of the need for this playbook and the foundation for it.
When I was reading the playbook, it mentions recent economic shifts that play into the strengths of Hampton Roads. Can you talk a little bit about these shifts and what they've meant for the region?
Yeah. Think about just what's happened these last handful of years. So it's lots of global tension, wars in Ukraine, wars in Gaza. You've got just the after effects of COVID, the just rapid acceleration of technology and AI adoption and the impacts that has had not only on the workplace and industry, but also on energy demand, right? And so all these things kind of swirling around, and the regions that understand this and get themselves positioned to frankly respond and take advantage of that are going to be the ones that win. The winners are going to be military metros. We call ourselves America's military metro. I mean, that's what we are.
And the playbook talks really about defense, energy, aerospace, and logistics as the four sectors. Why these four sectors?
Yeah, it could be 3, it could be 5. Just those happen to be the ones that the research that we did validates. I think the most interesting one is the analysis of DoD spending. We're the 5th largest DoD spend. We're the largest DoD per capita spend. We are a maritime industrial defense economy. And so that's the defense piece. And then logistics, we're an incredibly successful, incredibly robust, incredibly important port. If you kind of summed us up, we're a port community. But then energy is so important, but we also have some unique advantages. To me, the least connected, if you will, set of assets is around that aerospace piece. We think with a little bit of work, we can really connect those. But we think about NASA and the things that are happening at the Air Traffic Operations Lab. You think about what's happening at Wallops Island. How we fly is going to change a lot in the next handful of years with uncrewed systems and whatnot. Real opportunity for our region.
How will these sectors shape the future of the local economy?
I love the old adage, a high-wage, high-skilled job will create low-wage, low-skilled jobs, indirect jobs. It doesn't work the other way around. Low-wage, low-skilled jobs don't create high-wage, high-skilled jobs. And so these sectors, the people that are going to work in this space, they are high-skill, high-wage jobs. The payoff ultimately is creating economic growth, which creates wealth for Hampton Roads citizens, frankly, at all levels.
Thank you so much, Doug. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having the interest.
That was WHRO business reporter Toby Cox speaking with Doug Smith, president of the Hampton Roads Alliance, about a new economic playbook for the region.
Still ahead on Weekly Edition, military families in Hampton Roads are frustrated with TRICARE after a rough year with the healthcare provider. But first, Canada-based TC Energy announced this week that its recently expanded pipeline in Hampton Roads is officially in service. WHRO's Catherine Hafner explores what impact it will have.
Construction began last year on what the company calls the Virginia Reliability Project. It doubled the size of nearly 50 miles of an existing natural gas pipeline. The southern end runs through Suffolk and Chesapeake. Many local environmental groups and residents unsuccessfully fought the project. They argued it would harm minority communities and double down on fossil fuels that warm the planet. TC Energy and local officials say the expansion was necessary to replace aging infrastructure and keep gas flowing amid rising demand. The new section of pipeline is now pumping natural gas into a system that spans Virginia and 9 other states. Catherine Hafner, WHRO News.
A professor from Old Dominion University has received more than $2 million from the National Institutes of Health. WHRO health reporter Yi-Ching Wang reports the money will help advance treatment for the most aggressive and deadly form of brain tumors.
The Joan P. Brock Institute for Nutrition Science and Health will help future doctors and health professionals better understand how food and daily habits can prevent disease and improve long-term health. Data show poor nutrition has overtaken tobacco as the country's top cause of death. Despite this, medical students typically receive less than 20 hours of nutrition training. That gap is especially concerning in Hampton Roads, where diet-related illnesses like colorectal cancer and stroke remain among the highest in Virginia. The new $15 million institute will include a metabolic kitchen, giving students a space to prepare and analyze meals as part of hands-on nutrition training and community programs. The first nutrition students start in 2026. Yiqing Wang, WHRO News.
Advocates still want answers from TRICARE after a rough year for military families in Hampton Roads and around the country. WHRO military reporter Steve Walsh shares their issues with the healthcare provider.
TRICARE costs for most military families and retirees will go up between 2 and 3% next year. The price of prescription drugs will increase by more than 15%. Eileen Huck with the National Military Families Association says the cost of military health insurance has risen steadily over the past several years.
Anytime there's a cost increase, especially when the cost of living is already so high, and we know a lot of families are struggling financially, the last thing we want to see is, struggling to afford health care.
Adding to the problems, providers in the TRICARE network experienced significant payment delays during the first half of the year, including in Hampton Roads. Congress is asking for a full report on the problems in the latest defense bill. Steve Walsh, WHRO News.
The Joint Commission on the Future of Cannabis Sales met this week for the final time to unveil a revised blueprint for a legal cannabis retail market in Virginia. Toby Cox is WHRO's business and growth reporter, and she's here to talk about the changes made to the plan and what exactly Virginians can expect. Toby, what happened at this final meeting? What was it all about?
Yeah, so I tuned in Tuesday afternoon to the meeting, and it was really about presenting the proposed changes to the legislation that will be put in front of the General Assembly starting next year.
And this plan is a culmination of nearly 5 years of work. Why did it take so long to get here?
Yeah, so Virginia legalized personal possession and cultivation 4 years ago, but they have not yet legalized a retail market for cannabis. So while it's been legal to possess and cultivate personally, it has not been legal to sell. And the General Assembly has approved a retail market for 2 years, but both times they were vetoed at the governor level by outgoing Governor Glenn Youngkin.
What are the big takeaways and the changes that they put in this final blueprint?
Two of the major takeaways at the meeting yesterday was that localities will have the option of increasing local taxes to 3.5% as opposed to 2.5%. And that revenue can go towards whatever the locality decides. So that's not earmarked for anything. It's up to the individual localities. And the other takeaway would be that it's taking out the opt-out clause. So what that means is that these counties, they won't have the option to ban retail sales, so there'll be no dry counties. And during the meeting, Delegate Paul Krizak, who represents Fairfax, he was saying the reason behind this is that when counties can opt out, when there are dry zones, people just opt into the illicit market. But while this new proposal takes away counties' option to opt out, it also gives them additional tax revenue.
So this blueprint also focuses on bolstering small local businesses. What is that going to look like?
Yeah, it really, it seems to aim to prioritize small businesses. They're called micro businesses in the proposal. The proposal will give a limited number of licenses to these micro businesses and these impact licenses. And those impact licenses will be given to people who maybe have dealt with past criminalization for marijuana, or they're geographically disadvantaged, or they're from a community that was disproportionately policed by marijuana laws. It'll give a limited number of licenses. The total is 350.
So going from public comment where there were concerns, were there lawmakers talking about main concerns that they have going forward?
Yeah, there was a little bit of discussion during the presentation of the proposed changes. Senator Adam Eben, who represents Alexandria, expressed a number of concerns. Delegate Buddy Fowler, who represents Hanover, he called the new proposal a mixed bag. He said there were some aspects that he loved and hated. So there seems to be an acknowledgement that there will be discussion in January.
So ending the meeting, what were people's overall feeling about getting this done?
You know, talking to people after the meeting, it seems like people are optimistic. A lot of these small businesses, they started cultivating hemp in 2019. They were working under the assumption that there would be a retail market, especially after Virginia legalized personal possession and cultivation. So a lot of them have just been waiting in limbo, kind of. And a lot of them say that this year is different. And a lot of them are optimistic that it will go through both the General Assembly and at the governor level. Governor-elect Abigail Spanberger, she has expressed support for a regulated legal retail market for cannabis in the past. And Democrats hold majority of both House and Senate, and people have called it kind of like the trifecta. So a lot of people are optimistic that this is the year.
Well, it looks like Virginia is looking at big changes in 2026, even though things probably will change, right?
Yeah, I think one thing to keep in mind is that the proposal that we heard yesterday is not going to be what's presented in January. There's going to be a lot of changes. There's a lot of conversations happening. What was presented was just the latest proposal, not the final bill.
Toby Cox, thanks so much for joining us on Weekly Edition.
Thank you.
A Newport News open mic fosters a warm and accepting enclave for the LGBTQ plus community on the peninsula. WHRO's Nick McNamara was there.
Most Thursday nights, Cure Coffee House in City Center resonates with live music. Organizer Austin Milby has been hosting it since 2017. While there are other open mics on the peninsula, it can be hard to find one that's as intentionally engaging with the queer community.
We have the ability to create a space where those people don't feel unsafe anymore. We want to do that.
The vibe is co-curated by the community it embraces, including the baristas at the cafe. But performers Aubrey West and Eli Myers say that's in no small part thanks to Milby.
Your first instinct is to ask pronouns, you know. Yeah. We have a lot more people that just are confidently different.
Nick McNamara, WHRO News.
Christmas trees bring joy and cheer. WHRO business reporter Toby Cox reports that this year they offer another priceless gift, an economics lesson.
Inflation is making it more expensive to grow Christmas trees, with costs for things like labor and fertilizer rising. But Ryan Klaus, president of the Virginia Christmas Tree Growers Association, says a larger supply will likely hedge against extreme price hikes.
The input costs have gone up, but I think a lot of what the big growers are doing is just trying to make sure they can market their trees.
He says fewer Christmas trees were harvested and planted during the 2008 recession. That led to a shortage for the better part of a decade. Growers planted more to close the gap, but it takes up to 10 years for those trees to be ready to sell. Now, growers have trees they need to move. Klaus says though there will be plenty of supply and competition to get trees off the lot, your Christmas tree will probably be a little more expensive than last year. The best way to keep your bill down in Hampton Roads? Buy local. Toby Cox, WHRO News.
Shakespeare's Juliet gets a second chance at happiness this week during Broadway and Norfolk's Jukebox musical, And Juliet. Kate Nowak reports for WHRO.
And Juliet revamps Renaissance wear and 3 decades of pop hits to answer the question, what if Juliet didn't end it all over Romeo? The play within a play follows William Shakespeare and his wife, Anne Hathaway, as they write the unfolding show. They bicker, scheme, and each try to influence Juliet until they start to lose their power over her entirely. Fabiola Caraballo-Chiara, who plays Juliet, said the show is about the changing times. Hathaway sees Juliet's second chance as redemption for herself, too.
Maybe through what she's trying to accomplish with Juliet in her husband's play, maybe he'd be able to open his eyes and notice the pain that she's going through.
She said the play is clever, fun, and has a real message for the audience. Kate Nowak, WHRO News.
Southwest Virginia is a hotspot for tick-borne disease, with some of the highest per-person rates of Lyme disease in the state. That rise has happened over the past 20 years.
VPR's Katie Burke reports on why ticks and the diseases they carry have increased here and explores solutions, including a particularly overlooked one.
At a public health fair in Roanoke, Jenny Hall holds up a plush version of a blood-sucking mite.
Have you ever seen this?
Hall is a public health expert at Radford University and founder of the website Ticks in Virginia. This event is put on by a nonprofit called Blue Ridge Literacy that teaches adults English.
Spider. No. Tick. T-I-C-K. Tick. Yes.
Tick. A couple of advanced English students are visiting Hall's table, which is covered with displays and handouts in multiple languages. These students, Casimir and Wislet, have learned an important vocabulary word in Southwest Virginia. Tick-borne disease education is Hall's mission. In particular, residents from other countries often do not know basic tick prevention information or have the language to talk with their doctor.
So if they can go into the doctor with symptoms and say tick,
there's going to be a better chance of getting a diagnosis.
The outcomes following a Lyme disease diagnosis are worse for racial and ethnic minorities. A Lyme rash is harder to see on a person with darker skin, and if a patient doesn't even know to ask a doctor about a tick bite, they will struggle to get the help they need. And there's more that Hall wants these students to know.
In Virginia, we have many ticks all year long. Summer, many more. But in the winter, this black-legged tick is common.
In the winter?
Yes. If it's not freezing, they can come out.
Like Casimir and Wizlet, many residents are surprised by the number and seasonality of ticks these days. That's because the number of ticks is on the rise. Hall recently presented to an older audience in Salem that hadn't fully comprehended this rapid increase in tick-borne diseases.
They're like, we've had ticks here our whole lives. What's going on now that is different? Although people in the past may have had a lot of different tick bites and never had an issue, there was less of a chance to get a tick-borne disease.
Scientists do not fully understand why this increase has happened, but they've got some clues. The story is complex, starting centuries ago. Jory Brinkerhoff is a biologist at University of Richmond. He's been studying this change.
Deer populations shrank dramatically up until 100 years ago. As deer populations have come back, tick populations have followed.
Near one place that remnant deer herds had survived, Lyme disease was discovered, in Connecticut in 1975. Black-legged ticks and Lyme disease have been expanding ever since. Climate change is exacerbating that expansion because longer warm seasons are especially good for ticks. More ticks mean more tick-borne diseases. Brinkerhoff says,
Going back 20, 30 years ago, there were very few tick-borne disease cases in humans. Go into the early to mid-2000s, that's when things started to percolate, and it's just blown up since then.
Untangling all the factors at play is no easy task, but prevention is possible. Experts recommend wearing bug repellent, treating outdoor animals, and doing daily tick checks. Mowing and treating wild deer and mice with pesticides also help. But there's one option that has not received nearly enough attention, and that's where Elizabeth Gleim comes in. Gleim is a biologist at Hollins University near Roanoke. When she and 3 field techs were working in Georgia to study tick numbers on a forested site that had been regularly burned, they couldn't find any.
And after a month of field work, we had caught 1 tick across the entire 28,000-acre field site. And that is when I realized we had completely underestimated the power of fire.
Gleim had to broaden the study area to have enough ticks for comparison.
We found that, yes, if you're in an area that's burned on a long-term, regular basis, you're not going to have ticks. But also, if you are in an unburned area that is surrounded by burned area, you are also not going to have ticks.
Most of us aren't in a position to do regular controlled burning on the forests and fields around us, or treat all the animals in an area with tick pesticides. Although several Lyme disease vaccines are in clinical trials, they aren't out yet, and there aren't vaccines for the other tick-borne diseases. So for the time being, we prevent what we can. In Roanoke, I'm Katie Burke.
You've been listening to WHRO's Weekly Edition. We had help today from WHRO's Toby Cox, Steve Walsh, Catherine Hefner, John Doucette, Kate Nowak, Yi-Ching Wang, Nick McNamara, and Michelle Hankerson.
And VPR's Katie Burns, also Connor Worley, who produced today's show. A reminder that you can always catch full episodes on the Weekly Edition podcast feed.
You can get your news updates at WHRO.org and the WHRO Reports podcast feed. For all of us at WHRO and WHRV, I'm Barry Graham.
And I'm Jordan Christie. Have a great weekend.